Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to be reviewing The Flash, Season 8, Episode 15, titled Into the Still Force. If you enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, notifications on. Let's get right into the review. So, it opened up in the loft. Barry doesn't know Iris is gone at this point. Remember, at the end of 814, which aired last week, Iris is obviously gone in the Still Force. Iris had ended up texting Barry before she disappeared, saying that she was working late at Central City Media, or Central Citizen City Media, whatever it is, CCM, and Bear goes there and notices that she isn't there, but her phone is. So Barry searches the city for her, and I'm assuming what's going through this right now is that she's been kidnapped by God knows who by now, and then Barry goes to Star Labs and can't find Iris anywhere. The satellites aren't picking her up. Cecile can't feel Iris anywhere, which is probably the only useful thing she did in this episode, Cecile at least. Iris is nowhere on Earth, meaning she's not on the planet. And Barry connects that she's somewhere lost in time. She connects that Iris had this before, and this might be permanent now. Barry can't access the Still Force without Dion, who has been missing. Now, I had someone mention this, a couple people actually mentioned this a couple weeks ago, or not a couple weeks ago, last week when the promo released. Why can't Barry access it? This isn't the Still Force. If Barry's speed was given by the Still Force, or if Barry had powers through the Still Force, he could access it like Dion can. But Barry's powers are directly from the Speed Force. Did the Still Force give Barry a boost before? Yes. But that doesn't just give him access to the Still Force to go into it whenever he wants. The Speed Force doesn't go into it whenever he wants because it's the Speed Force. That's Barry's power. Again, like Dion, the source of his power is the Still Force. Dion can access it whenever he wants, but he can't just go into the Speed Force whenever he wants. He has to go through Nora to let him in. That's how it works. So for Barry, because he isn't a godlike being like Dion and the other forces, he has to rely on Dion to get into the Still Force. If that makes any sense. I'm trying to explain as best as I can. So Barry goes to find Tinia because that was the last person. That was when Iris disappeared the first time, and he's trying to figure that out. And then it goes to Chill Lame and Kate talking about resurrecting Frost. And at the end of 814, again, Kate said she's going to bring her back. And Chill Lame doesn't want to, which is probably the only good thing that he's good for this show now. No hate on the writers, but they kind of screwed him over. So I guess we kind of do need Frost back for this character to be in use. Who knows? Kate wants to go grave robbing to steal more of Frost's DNA, which is so wonderful. I wanted to point this out. The ruthlessness that we see in Kate in this episode goes back to 805, when Kate is telling Thawne that we aren't going to save him, we're going to let him die. That was a different Kate that we haven't seen on this show before, and now we're getting that version of Caitlyn back. This is a ruthless, dark Caitlyn. And we saw that in 805 with Thawne. Now we're getting it back with Frost, but kind of the reverse, pun intended, of of bringing Frost back, not letting her stay dead. Whereas Thawne, we'd be letting him die. Yeah, the reverse, literally the reverse. But nonetheless, this is ruthless Caitlyn that we're dealing with. So, yeah. Chill Lame wants nothing to do with bringing Frost back. Barry goes to find Tinia at the Jitters. That's, ironically enough, exactly like Central Cities. We already knew that, but nonetheless, it's still around to point out. Tinia mentioned she was fine before Iris came into her life, which she was. She wasn't great, but better than she was now. She isn't going to help Barry find Iris because she's still blaming Iris for her mom missing, which why wouldn't you? Then everything freezes around Barry, and it isn't him. This wasn't Barry accessing the Speed Force, using his powers, slowing down time. This was the Still Force, and Dion appeared, and you could hear him, like, screaming as he was coming in, because obviously the time sickness is affecting him, and you could see he was still hurt from it. Dion mentions he needs Barry's help in the Still Force. And then we go to Barry talking to Team Flash about him going into the Still Force, which is risky as hell. And Joe's questioning it, which is good on him, and isn't sure this is the right move. Joe mentions the other forces, if Barry has asked him if this is the right thing to do, and he has to be able to contact them. So this time sickness, from what it appears to be, is not only affecting Dion, it's affecting the other forces. As in the Speed Force, Strength Force, Sage Force, it's affecting all of it. Now, how Barry's speed isn't affected, because the forces aren't dying. It's just they're being tampered with. So Barry's speed wouldn't necessarily be messed around with. It would just be the Speed Force might be having like shifts in time because it's the Still Force one that's messing up. It could be affecting the others, like the Speed Force could be in the year 2049, and then it could be set right back to 2013 or 2012 or, 1980. It could be shifting every now and then. That's what's going on with the other forces. I'm assuming that's what they meant by that. And not every force is having some sickness going on. Like with the Speed Force, a speed sickness, or Strength Force having a strength issue. I mean, I don't think it's that. I think the Still Force is the main issue here, which is what they're trying to zone in on. And every force is being affected by the time sickness, but it's not the people connected to it, like Barry with the speed, or Wally, or Jesse, or Nora, or Bart. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their speeds. Like, or they might, but it would be depleting every now and then. It's not like that. It's just inside the force, not out of it, which makes sense if you really think about it. So, but anyways, Bear couldn't contact them. Joe tries to talk Bear out of this, and he's blaming himself for not being there for Iris, which is why he's doing this whole thing. Kramer calls Chester while he's working on the device to track the particles in Iris when they're in the Still Force, and says she needs his help. Barry is not very patiently waiting in the speed lab. You can see him pacing back and forth. And Dion appears again. You can hear him screaming. Now, this is a very good detail because it just shows you, A, how literally endangered the Still Force is right now, and B, how messed up Dion is by this time sickness. I mean, you could hear him screaming across the Still Force. He's trying to get to Barry, and we saw that at the jitters in the other city too. So it's good detail, and if you didn't realize that, you need to rewatch, because it was good detail. It really was. Seeing Dion appear that way instead of him disappearing, like you can hear him screaming as he comes in, or not necessarily screaming, but you can hear him in pain as he comes in. So Dion mentions where they're going is super risky and it's going to get really weird really fast. They go to where Iris first got sick in that like park area that we saw in 716 when we first learned of Iris's time sickness. Dion can see everything from there, the past, the present, the future, all of it. He can see it. And then green lightning, comes down and nearly strikes Barry. He uses his super speed to get out of the way, which in season 7, he wouldn't have even thought to do. So thank you, writers. Again, he dodged it with the super speed. The Still Force is much more dangerous than it was before. It wasn't just targeting Barry. Like, there's lightning strikes all over the Still Force. It's not just because Barry showed up and it striked them. It was just one strike. There's probably hundreds of strikes around the Still Force, just striking random places. That's what's going on in the Still Force. It's not just a pure attack on Barry. It's a random attack. That's what it was. That's why we only saw it once throughout the episode. The time in the Still Force is speeding up. Missing up, I guess. Not necessarily speeding up. But Dion mentioned for one moment it's day, then it's the afternoon, then it's night, and then it's morning, and then it's night, and then it's morning, and afternoon, and it's morning again, and it's night. It goes back and forth, and then forward, and back, and forward, and back. You get what I mean? It's a mess. And that could be a song. Forward and back, never mind. So the skies are green, obviously, because it's the Still Force. and Barry sees a newspaper. It changed like twice. I didn't read the first time it read, but I think it said someone died, and it shows Star Labs or something, but then it goes to the Zoom in Godspeed article. Barry didn't really have a reaction to it, which why would you? I mean, it changes every now and then. So I wish Barry would have said something, but at the same time, I'm glad he didn't, because it's like, this is not even probably going to happen. If this future is just changing in and out and it's in the still force, I mean, you can't really rely on that. You know what I mean? You can't say, like, the newspaper record that we saw from season 1 through 6 of Barry vanishing in Crisis, which thanks to Oliver, it didn't happen, or at least right now it didn't happen. We don't know, maybe next year it will, but nonetheless, I mean, this isn't like that. This is in the still force, and the still force is screwing up. And this article appeared, so why would you trust that when we know time is screwing up? So there's zero reason for Barry to trust that, which I'm glad he didn't, because it probably wouldn't happen anyways. So Dion mentions that Barry could get trapped in a place where time just repeats itself forever, endlessly. If that happens, Dion might never get him out. So they go to, I think, CCM or someplace, and Dion needs to try to stabilize Iris first before getting her back. Time is not so repeating itself. You can see with Allegra and some reporter, I think it was a friend of hers, and apparently this is the future where they're just repeating dialogue of a story about Allegra going public, and Allegra doesn't want to post it. I'm assuming, I think Dion said this is the future, but it reminded me of a past scene. I don't remember what it was, but it was that girl that's always been out for Allegra, that we saw in one of the episodes where Allegra was taking over CCN, or CCM, whatever, and that one girl was saying that she'll be fired for it. So I'm assuming something happens with Allegra where she does something bad, and this person finds out, goes after Allegra. That'll be something for a future episode, but I'm assuming that's teasing that. Barry finds Tina's mom in the still force, and she's trapped like Iris, and Barry wants to save her, but Dion is pressuring Barry to find Iris now, because if they don't, well, she's gone, but also Tina's mom and whoever else is stuck in there. I'm sure there's other people by now, because God only knows what Iris did with the time sickness. Just touching someone did that. I mean, what about the other people? I'm sure she's touched other people, but you know what I mean? I mean, what she didn't know about it, and someone got zapped in there. I mean, could be so many people in there trapped. But nonetheless, we go back to Chester at CCPD with Kramer, and Chester was investigating the device that set off a wave that destroyed an entire building, but everyone was evacuated from it, which is weird, because you're trying to destroy a building. Most people don't, evacuate the building. And he takes out a device, or like a piece of tech from the device, and he learns that it was powering from kinetic energy, and there's a ton of it in there, and he recognizes the tech in the machine, and Chester looks into it, but you can kind of tell where this is going, but we go into a little bit later. Barry and Dion now go to CCM in the still force, and time is just completely froze. There's nothing moving. Now, Barry mentioned something about a news article in there that was shown. I don't remember what it was shown, what was shown, on it. I don't think it was anything big, but, yeah, I don't, it was something Barry said. I don't remember what it was. But it led them to a time orb, and Dion goes around it. Barry's confused as hell what he's doing because it's weird. And then Dion grabs the orb and just puts it into him. Now, this orb here looks like the same orb that he put into Iris to track her, which is what this device would do. So, the fact that it's not on Iris, and Dion just took it and left Barry and took the device in the still force, should tell you something. I don't know what, but it should tell you something. And then Barry tries to catch Dion before he vanishes, try running at him, but Dion was already gone, and Barry just runs into the still force, and it throws him to Joe's house. And and he tries running out the door or facing into the wall, and it just runs him back to where he came up. So he can't leave Joe's house. Then it goes to Central City 2049 with Nora being there working on an article, which is different to what we knew Nora to be like, because she was CSI in season 5. Now she's a reporter trying to be, which if you don't know, this is a different Nora. Whether it's, I'm assuming Crisis changed it, I'm assuming that's what they're going with. But this is a different Nora than when we got in season 5. We've had this Nora for the past 2 years now. This isn't the same one season 5. It's the same suit, same actor, but things are a little bit, or actress, sorry, but things are a little bit different with the character. We do realize that later in the episode as well. So, Dion appeared like in Still Force particles to Nora in 2049, says he needs her help to save Barry. So it's a complete 180 from what Dion just did to Barry. Now he wants to save him, but needs Nora to do it. So whatever the hell Dion's plan is something. So Barry finds Iris's brush in Joe's house in the Still Force that we saw disappear at the end of Anal 6. There was a flashback to it. Barry can hear Excess's voice echoing throughout the Still Force as she's coming into Joe's house. And then we go back to Chester and Star Labs working on the piece of tech that was in the machine. We learn, which if you couldn't piece it together by now, this was a piece of Chester's tech that was used, that he put on his live stream that someone saw, put in a machine to sort of building with. So this is entirely Chester's fault. He's blaming himself. Allegra mentions the person who set off the device might have some good intentions if the guy got everyone out before it went off, which does make pretty damn good sense to think about, because if you're going to destroy a building, and you're not like construction work or anything, and you're just a random person, or, you're trying to do, you're a criminal, you probably wouldn't let the people out of the building. If this isn't like a criminal mastermind. This is someone who's messing around and just screwed up. Like, this is what we're looking at. That's what Allegra is saying, and it didn't end up being true that we find out later in the episode. So, Nora tells Bear that Dion came for her, and Barry mentions that Dion is the reason he's stuck there in the first place. Barry is recognizing that Joe is right, and he missed all the signs that Dion was tricking him, which is kind of true. And Nora knows about the other Nora, how she was a CSI, and mentions that she's now a reporter like Iris. Barry mentions he is proud of Nora, which, wasn't surprising, because, he's a good dad. And future Iris is teaching Nora to trust her instincts, and mentions that Barry should do the same. And then Barry puts pieces together of how to get out, and he mentions that there's a piece of the Still Force inside him already, and if he can control it, he can get out with Nora. Now, there's a piece of the Still Force in him because of Dion and them teleporting around. I'm assuming that's what it meant. There was not a piece of the Still Force inside Barry before he went in. Otherwise, he would have pieced that together. So it happened sometime when he was in there. Then we go to a giant freaking lion, like, just coming in and out of the timeline in the Still Force up to Joe's house. It was weird as hell. And I would have loved to see Barry fight a lion, but that didn't happen. Anyways, so Barry's trying to focus on the Still Force, and then it mentions that Wally taught Barry how to contact the other forces, but it isn't doing anything in the Still Force. Nora grabs Iris's brush for Barry to use as an anchor. Joe can see Nora and Barry in his house, but they're glowing green because they're in a Still Force, obviously. And Iris's brush is in Joe's house in present day. It left the Still Force because Barry left it, or made it go out pretty much. Barry had green eyes and green lightning flickering in his eyes. You could see it. And he said he can feel the Speed Force energy coursing through him. The past, the present, the future. He saw Jesse, Harry, Cisco, Bart's children. Nora's wife, which we knew from season 5 that she was a, lesbian, and sees a person named Max, who in the comics is a speedster. I think it was a ripoff of Quicksilver or something along those lines. So, I don't know, and I think his full name is Max Mercury, as in Mercury Labs, as in whoever the hell runs that, I'm blanking, but I'm assuming their son? God, why am I blanking on her name? You know who I'm talking about. I don't remember, but I don't know. It was just weird. But anyways, Bear touches Nora's hand, and they now have green lightning flickering throughout them, and they run through the still force to get out, and they're running towards the exit where they came in at that park area, where Dion said you can see everything from the beginning of the episode when they enter the still force. The exit has a temporal barrier. Bear and Nora run into it and go flying backwards. There's a really amazing run scene, by the way. The running scenes in this season have been just amazing in general, so I wasn't surprised this was going to happen. But Barry has like orangish, yellowish lightning with green lightning as well, and Nora's purple and green, because obviously still forces coursing through them. Barry and Nora try phasing through it. It doesn't do anything, and knocks them back even further. So they try running at it, but focusing on when they get out. Not how, not if, but when they get out. That's what they need to focus on to actually get out of the still force, because the still force is pulling Barry and Nora back into the past, so they need to focus on the future to get out. So then Barry and Nora end up getting out, and they tell Joe and Cecile about all of it. Barry doesn't have an ounce of the still force left in him anymore. That was the only ounce he could use to get out. So they're questioning why Dion tried trapping Barry in the past. Nora goes back to 2049 to check on future Iris. Make sure everything's good up there. Bear could feel Iris when he tapped into the still force, meaning she's still alive, which we knew she was, but for them, that was a relief for Joe and Cecile, or at least Joe mainly, because we had no idea what happened to her. So she is still alive in the still force, just no idea where the hell she is, and how they're going to get back is beyond me or beyond them. So then we find out the device that destroyed the building was set off on accident, was intended on destroying, and wasn't intended on destroying a building. Chester and Lego leave the lab area, and Chester's computer gets hacked, and it downloads all the files on his computer. So, who knows where that's going. Then it goes back to Kate with Chill Lame at the door. He freezes the doorknob and breaks in, and Caitlin's pissed off about it, which why wouldn't you be? But they're gonna get in case being an idiot. So, Chill Lame decides to help Caitlin bring Frost back. And Caitlin managed to convince him earlier. And Caitlin is now promising they won't fail. Which is so totally going to work out in their favor. And totally not in an anticlimactic way where Frost won't come back. Or she will, but Caitlin will have powers. And will be wearing the Frost suit with black hair, because we totally haven't seen that in set photos. We totally haven't seen that in the 820 finale, which totally doesn't mean that this totally will not work and totally will work at the same time, which is totally just confusing at the same time. Yep. Try dealing with that. Yeah, that's... I don't know how I feel about Frost coming back, if they're going to bring her back on some level. I think we all know she won't be a human being. It will probably be like how it was before, where they're one person just killing with Frost powers and working through her head. But it's going to be interesting to see where they go with that. So I really did enjoy this episode. I think it was an easy 8 out of 10. I wouldn't say 9. There were some things that were like, but I mean the Chester stuff, but I didn't really care for. But everything in the still force is great. Dion was great. I mean, all the storylines with that was interesting, even in past episodes as well. Seeing Barry and Dion together was amazing. Just an amazing episode overall. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the episode. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Have a good night. Stay safe. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.